Welcome to another week of In the Loop. This program is brought to you by Louisville Metro Office of Resilience and Community Services. I'm Debbie Belt. I'm the Communications Coordinator for our Office of Resilience and Community Services, and I am delighted to be with you this afternoon. I'm also delighted to be joined by our new Homeless Communications Coordinator, Julia Dake. She's been a busy lady. She joined us in May.
Very busy, yes.
And we've been doing a lot in our department over the last several years, and here lately even more around homeless initiatives. And that is why we're very glad to be joined by our special guest today. His name is Bryce Butler. He's the Manager Director of Access Ventures. Bryce is here to share information about the Know Homelessness Campaign. It's really cool. You all, so glad you're listening, and we're glad to welcome Bryce. Welcome, Bryce, and I'm going to turn it over to Julia.
Hi, Bryce. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good. Thanks for calling in. So I was going to ask if you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and just your background at Access Ventures.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a Louisvillian. I've been here probably 15 years. Moved here, transplant because of the military, stationed at Fort Knox, and happened to marry a Kentuckian who's kept me here and have 4 daughters. I started Access Ventures about 7 years ago after some work as managing a family office in the region. And, we're a 501c3 private operating foundation, but our mission is to build a more inclusive and creative economy. Fundamentally, what we believe is people have limited access to the economy. And so our work is to really, how do we build a more equitable, dynamic, and resilient economy? And so Know Homelessness Campaign is one of those efforts.
No, great. Thank you. What inspired you all to create Know Homelessness? I know you just said that you're working with people, or your nonprofit works to help people who have limited access, but was there a particular inspiration behind Know Homelessness, or was it just a general interest of the people who work at Access Ventures?
That's a great question. Probably both. I think ultimately it originated because of some of our work around housing insecurity as a general theme. And one of my team members, Mallory, kind of was tasked to do a landscape analysis of kind of what are some of the inhibitors to progress in the area of housing insecurity in Louisville and Southern Indiana. And the first thing we launched out of that was the Reconstruct Challenge, which was a $3 million multi-phase grant to identify innovations related to housing insecurity, everything from M-Relief, which is kind of the turbo tax for SNAP benefits, to Haven Connect, to the Work Your Way Home initiative with New Directions. The other thing that kind of came out of that was Know Homelessness, and that was really a direct initiative to address some of the myths and preconceived notions that people have as it pertains to people experiencing homelessness. One of the major things in her research and in talking with a lot of service providers was just how in our minds we often imagine a person that's homeless as that person with a cardboard sign by the roadside or living under a bridge, and we fail to acknowledge or recognize that homelessness is a pretty complex circumstance, and that many people live quietly and are experiencing homelessness. And so we wanted to kind of use this campaign to kind of elevate that conversation and move people towards empathy and action.
No, that's very admirable, and I'm glad that you all have taken such a vested interest, especially into housing. Could you tell us a little bit about Work Your Way Home? When you said that, it piqued my curiosity, so I'm kind of wanting to knowing about it, or I kind of want to know about it right now. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, Work Your Way Home. We started the Reconstruct Challenge, which was basically trying to identify new solutions to solving for housing insecurity. And what we saw were interesting ideas outside of our region that were looking to kind of deploy their solutions in Louisville and Southern Indiana. But we also saw some collaborations. And so Work Your Way Home was really interesting because it was a new initiative between a kind of a multi service provider kind of endeavor. So the partners on that were LHome, which is a local community development finance institution, New Directions Housing Corporation, and the Housing Partnership Initiative, HPI. And so they kind of all worked together, and the whole idea of that was to take something that Norton Healthcare had actually done, which was a down payment assistance program for new employees and trying to create a match structure where they would take the grant dollars and the partnership with Access Ventures, and then work with employers that were interested in incorporating that into their kind of benefits provision for associates. And so they have a partnership with FMS, which is a janitorial service company out of the Portland neighborhood, and a couple of others as well that have agreed to partner on this. And so they provide not only housing assistance, education, but also the down payment assistance through this initiative as well.
Oh, that's amazing. I had no idea that existed, but thank you for letting us know. So I'm going to kind of transition this back to homelessness a little bit. And I know you mentioned Southern Indiana when you were talking about Work Your Way Home. And it's also brought up in the Know Homelessness Campaign. But can you share with us how homelessness might be different in Southern Indiana than it is in Louisville? Or is it kind of the same?
That's a fantastic question. And I'm glad you asked it. I think some of the things that one of the major reasons we started Know Homelessness was because of the homeless experience for many people in Southern Indiana. Countless times we would talk with service providers from St. John's to St. Elizabeth to Recenter to Wayside Christian Mission, and on average, about 20% of the people that provide services to have an Indiana driver's license. But on countless occasions, when we talked to these service providers, they didn't have a presence in Southern Indiana. And so there was a huge disconnect between what you hear in some of the initiatives of Jeffersonville and Clarksville and New Albany around solving for issues of homelessness that exist in Southern Indiana, but also major gaps in being able to provide those services because of regulatory hurdles. And so if you put yourself in the position of a person experiencing homelessness, let's say, on some example, you might be a formerly incarcerated individual and you need housing assistance. Well, all of a sudden, maybe you might be in a situation where you have to violate issues of your parole, cross state lines in order to receive services because they just don't exist in Southern Indiana. And so when we think about just the situation, it's multifaceted because all of a sudden that taps the Kentucky state funding for providing services to Indiana residents versus having those services available in Southern Indiana. So there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of zoning restrictions that make it very difficult for these organizations to establish a foothold and a presence in these communities. Center for Women and Families, for example, shut down their Southern Indiana location.
Oh, I didn't know
as
that.
a result of some of those restrictions. And that was one of the things too, working with Center for Women and Families, specifically. They assign a threat level to a person experiencing domestic violence in their home, and they were surprised that many people in Southern Indiana always come into the receive care with the highest threat level. And in talking with them, I think we forget that Southern Indiana, although it is a suburb of Louisville and really close in proximity, it's a different community. It's a rural community that just happens to be across the river from an urban metropolis. So many people in Southern Indiana have a different mindset as it relates to asking for help. And so when people come in for those services, they are desperate and they need assistance. And in Louisville, where it's a little bit more familiar to reach out and ask for assistance, you have people across the spectrum that are in need of care. And so I think we've got to keep that in mind, that Southern Indiana is a different demographic as we look to provide services.
Yeah, and I know that was definitely something that came up for me, just, not being from this area, but just seeing the vast differences between Southern Indiana and Louisville, just in terms of area, like you said. So I think it's really cool that you all are taking that into consideration. So kind of to steer back to Know Homelessness, do you have any quick facts or other information that you want to share with the audience about homelessness? Just some stats, if you have them off the top of your head. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
no, you're great. I think the things that I try to go to are the things that I hopefully help people understand. That I think a lot of times in any community they talk about homelessness. And that's true about Louisville. But I think what we want to do is remind people that homelessness is an experience more often than it is a reality that's consistent. I think when people imagine, if I ask listeners to kind of think about a person that's homeless in their mind, oftentimes they imagine that person under the bridge. But what they fail to recognize is that a person under the bridge is what we would call chronically homeless. Generally, they have some mental health issues, substance use disorder issues that coincide with their homelessness experience. But the reality is 45% of homeless people actually have a job and have worked in the last 30 days. And I think that's something to kind of keep in mind. The fact that 50% of women that experience homelessness are actually the victims of domestic violence. And then I think given the eviction moratorium that was just lifted and COVID and the impacts on renters specifically, that Louisville has, believe it or not, 2 times the national average eviction rate.
Oh, wow.
And so I think we've got to keep those things in mind as we think about and imagine the experiences of many people that are suffering from homelessness.
So you all are trying to take, facts about homelessness and have them kind of help listeners, viewers, people who are engaging with your content view it through more of a compassionate lens rather than
Correct.
asking themselves, oh, why, and then going through the stereotypes they may have or preconceived notions about homelessness. And I think that's great that you all are doing that. How did you locate formerly unsheltered individuals to participate in your informational videos? I did watch, I think there were, you focused on 3 individuals who were formerly homeless and an individual going through the eviction process. So I was wondering how you all went about finding those people willing to be interviewed.
That's a great question. And I think behind that is a desire, our desire was to be sensitive that these are not our stories, but their stories to tell. And so we did as much as we could to work with and through partners. And so we partnered with Curtis Creative as our storytelling partner, who then also partnered with a lot of the service providers. So I remember one of the stories in particular that was a video came through one of our partner connections, St. John's Homeless Shelter. And so those partners that are directly working with people receiving care are the ones that know them best. And so we made sure to kind of work with them. We also had an advisory panel that was making sure that as we were telling the stories that we were doing so in a sensitive way. And we weren't using these stories in a way, but really trying to capture their stories. And so we worked with a lot of different partners in order to create these stories. And first, wanted to identify those willing to kind of share their stories, because what we wanted was different stories. We wanted someone experiencing more specifically the impacts of chronic homelessness, but also a working mother who loves her children and is the victim of domestic violence, and how those are all unique, but still people experiencing housing insecurity and homelessness.
And do you mind expanding on the themes about that were kind of prevalent throughout the campaign, which were keeping an open mind and asking people about their experience with homelessness? I know that you were just, describing how you all located individuals who were willing and willing to share their experience with homelessness or of being formerly homeless or facing the potential of homelessness, but when asking people about their experience with homelessness, what did you all mean by that?
Yeah, I think that's one, keeping an open mind is first acknowledging that everybody finds themselves homeless. That first and foremost, homelessness. Oftentimes we throw that around as a modifier, like a homeless man or a homeless woman or a homeless person. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes a defining element to their identity. And what we wanted to do is, no, it's a man, it's a woman, it's a person that's experiencing homelessness, that's unsheltered, that doesn't have a place necessarily on a day in and day out basis to call home, but also recognizing that each of their experiences is unique. So keeping an open mind is recognizing that just because you might be talking with one individual experiencing homelessness doesn't mean that's the exact same story of the other person that's experiencing homelessness. They may be the victim of domestic violence. They may be the victim of substance use disorder. They may be down on their luck. They may be working really hard, but couldn't meet a rental bill, and they find themselves evicted, and they're now requesting services from a shelter. Mm-hmm. And so I think the first thing is keeping an open mind and really trying to question the origins and of the myths that we oftentimes tell ourselves. Oh, this person's lazy. Oh, this person did something to deserve this. Oh, this person just made bad choices or hangs around with bad people. And I think oftentimes if that's the starting point, we're not going to be willing to really understand and step into the complexity that many people experience related to insecurity.
No, I think it's great that you all are, presenting facts about homelessness and individuals experiencing homelessness in a way that, really emphasizes that the homeless experience is not a monolith. It's not the same for everyone.
Correct.
And I think we can all fall into that sometimes where, you see it a lot and you kind of get into that mindset of, it all's kind of the same circumstance, but when in fact it really isn't. So thank you for clarifying that. I really appreciate it. I'm going to ask my co-host Debbie if she has any questions.
Well, I am just enjoying the program so much, listening to both of you all. So I want to thank. No, I truly am. So I want to thank again our guest Bryce Butler. He is with Access Ventures, and then Julia Dake. She's with our Louisville Metro Office of Resilience and Community Services. Really, Bryce, I was just going to ask. I know we'll get into specifics in a moment about an exciting venture you had with coffee shops, but can you just give like the overview of the Know Homelessness Campaign, just kind of the broad overview?
Yeah, I mean, the Know Homelessness, again, it's kind of it's provocative. It's KNOW homelessness.com is the website. And one of the things is we wanted to bring high quality story to an issue that I think oftentimes people think they understand, which is the homeless experience. And so also it's a play on words, right? No, KNOW or NO. And so we want to end homelessness. I think that's the desire of many people in communities. I don't think you are going to talk to someone that says, oh yeah, I think homelessness is a good thing for our community or for people. And so ultimately, though, the reasons we don't step into finding and identifying solutions that really help people move through their experience of homelessness is because we've chosen to believe some myth, or it's hard, or it's difficult. And so I think the first step is educating ourselves on the experience of homelessness. And so we wanted to kind of create almost like a truth campaign, if you will, with high quality videos and stories and graphics and partnerships and collaborations. And so the coffee shops, one, were a third space. Oftentimes that end up having many homeless people needing a cup of hot coffee to come in, or a place to just kind of put their feet up, and so a place that all of us kind of enjoy, and using that kind of third space, if you will, that safe space, to engage in a community conversation around the myths and the stats and the opportunities that we should be pursuing as a community. And so that's the first step, is the conversation. Hopefully that moves people towards an understanding and empathy, and really trying to look at the person and to kind of restore an element of dignity to the people that they see. And so we've been really, really proud of that. And there's a lot of different directions this could go over time, but that was the first step, was starting a conversation.
Well, you all do have a lot to be proud of, and so we encourage all our listeners to check out the knowhomelessness.com website, the Know Homelessness on Facebook and Twitter.
And Instagram.
And Instagram. I mean, really, take a few minutes and look at these magnificent graphics and videos and the storytelling and the stats, and just glad that our listeners are with us right now listening to Bryce talk about it. And thank you, Bryce. I'll turn it back over to Julia.
Yeah, no, thank you, Debbie. That was a really good question. So kind of back to the coffee shops, which I think everyone likes coffee or something that a coffee shop offers. So I am excited to hear about this. But were coffee shops excited to get into this? And did they have anything exciting to report back? And along that, with that question is, how did you get coffee shops to be involved in the first place?
It's a great question. I'll start with kind of the final part. How did we get coffee shops involved? We just asked, And I think it was a community effort. I mean, to date, I think we have roughly 30 different partner organizations that have been a part of this campaign in some fashion. But I think what we find oftentimes is people, if we just ask organizations and businesses, they're willing to kind of jump in. There have been some in particular that were really key advocates, Mike Mays with Heine Brothers and some others. But by and large, every coffee shop, I think, one, they experience this on a regular basis. And I think for them, they saw this as an opportunity to equip and train even their baristas on how better to handle an experience with someone that might come in that is otherwise homeless. And so we actually did early on in the campaign, we actually organized through our community partners and our advisory group a training for some of the baristas on how to actually respond, both to a person experiencing homelessness that might come in, but also someone that's going to ask about the campaign. Because we didn't want to just throw this out on the counter and then all of a sudden someone says, oh, that's interesting, and they ask the barista, and the barista doesn't know what to say. That doesn't really achieve the end goal. And so we were, as best as possible, trying to equip and resource. And so we've had some really interesting stories and really great stories of baristas now that are able, maybe a little bit more sensitive to someone that's coming in and wants to just prop up their feet.
Awesome.
Or also we've had, I can't remember the exact location, but one coffee shop sent in a message about a customer that initially was put off by some of the material, but once they engaged with the barista was able to answer some of their questions, and they took one of the flyers. And so, just small little moments like that I think that make it exciting.
And I should add, in addition to flyers, you all had branded coffee cups. Is that correct? Like disposable
Yep.
Coffee cups that had, was it statistics or just the graphic, or is it just different facts? Do you mind elaborating on that?
Yeah, we saw coffee cups as kind of a walking billboard. And so we wanted them to each be emblazoned with some of those statistics that I've already mentioned, the 1 in 10 Louisville renters facing eviction, or 45% of adults experiencing homelessness have worked in the last 30 days. So that as they walk around and someone else might see it, it might engage a conversation. So the coffee cups are throughout pretty much every coffee shop that you might walk into around Louisville, Southern Indiana. And they probably will be for the next month or so as there was a supply that was ordered, and the coffee shops have been excited to continue to use those as well.
No, that's great. I'm really excited to see it. I've not. I'm trying not to buy coffee, so I've been good not buying coffee from coffee shops. But I'm sure everyone else has seen those, and I've definitely seen your billboards though. So can you tell us kind of the concept behind the billboards and just where they might be located if someone wants to take a look?
Yeah, they're kind of at key thoroughfares and also in some of the smaller neighborhood billboards. But we kind of wanted to kind of blanket, if you will, much of the community with different statistics, kind of the same stuff. It's a marketing tactic of kind of making sure people see it not once but twice and 3 times in different mediums. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to engage kind of a multimedia strategy. So if you go to the website, there are long-form videos. Like you mentioned, there's 4 powerful stories that we've been able to turn into shorter-form videos. We also have graphic animations that break down some of the myths that we are able to kind of put through things like Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And then there's the billboard. So people that may not be on social media, ideally it's going to pull them into a discussion and a conversation. So ideally, kind of over the course of the 30, 45, 60 days of this effort, there's billboards, there's the coffee shops, which are kind of a place that people go, and then these walking billboards with the coffee cups, to buttons and stickers, and then the videos on the website. So it's intended to kind of engage people, pique their interest, and get them talking about these issues that we should all care about as a community.
Bryce, hi, this is Debbie again. Hearing all of that, I just have to. It just gets me excited. I mean, the quality of work that comes out of your organization, and it just makes me curious.
Well, thank you.
Who all is on your team? Can you give us a little, description of your team? Or you don't have to list by name, but just how do you all do all this? Because this is amazing work.
Well, thank you. Well, we have on the Access Ventures team, we have everything from, because we're, as a private operating foundation, we're somewhat of a unique bird. So we do actually have an endowment that we invest, and all of our assets are invested alongside of our mission. So I have investment personnel that are identifying different funds and fund managers. We have a director of product that has just recently joined us formally from LHCC as well as Accelerate Health. They've got a lot of experience in kind of product development. We've got a whole marketing team from graphic design to video to podcasting. And then we have an amazing program team. So I mentioned Mallory. She's run this kind of initiative for us for the last 3.5 years now. But we have other team members as well that are working on other community projects. And then we have a whole host of partner organizations. So, with the Know Homelessness one, it was really intended to be a community collaboration. So our storytelling partner has been just phenomenal, and they're well known in the community. But Curtis Creative has just really jumped onto this and grabbed it, and their whole team has been involved, to the advisory committee, to both homeless coalitions on both sides of the river, to all of these coffee shops and service providers. So it's been really neat to kind of see things come together.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It really is. My hat's off to all of you all. Amazing
Well,
coordination there. I think we have a caller that would like to ask a question. Go ahead, please.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. I just wanted to know, is the coffee shop back open? Because y'all have been closed for months and months now.
Some of them are, I would imagine, still closed. But some of the locations. So, like for instance, Heine Brothers, their locations are open, and a part of it, Quill's Coffee, Safai, Coffee Crossings, a prominent location in southern Indiana. But many of the places where we've been working with, if they're not open for, are open for drive-through.
And thank you for that question. Glad you're looking to support out there. I'll turn it back to Julia.
Yeah, we're kind of running out of time here, but I do want to ask one final question. And I think it's to me it's the most important. I hope you all think so too. But what ways can the community and just listeners and just the general public, what can they do to get involved to help their homeless neighbors?
Great question. I think the first thing is kind of the themes of the campaign is to have an open mind, and to kind of begin to ask yourself kind of what is it that I've chosen to believe or I've been told about people experiencing homelessness that I need to maybe question. And then as you kind of journey into that, there are great ways to get involved, both as an advocate or just directly with a service provider. And we've listed on our website, tried to make it as simple as possible, ways to both give, but then also to volunteer. And then I think the thing that always kind of goes alongside of that is to advocate and educate our local officials, whether that's in southern Indiana, whether that's in Louisville, whether that's at state level, but they all have a part to play, a role to play in helping people experiencing homelessness. And how do we, through policy, begin to actually address some of these eviction rates and some of these zoning restrictions that make it really difficult for these service providers to establish the care that they know is important for these residents. So I think, again, continue to educate yourself and then begin to get involved. And I hopefully eventually it's holding our elected officials accountable to continue to consider people experiencing homelessness as they look at simple things like zoning restrictions that make it very difficult for service providers.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that answer, and I think that is definitely a great call to action for our listeners. Thank you.
And Bryce, we want to thank Bryce Butler. I think our show is sadly coming to an end because it's been so interesting listening to Bryce Butler, Managing Director of Access Ventures. Thank you so much. You've done a great part in helping to educate all of us today. Everyone, take a few minutes, go to knowhomelessness.com, go to Know Homelessness on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and visit those coffee shops.
Thank you so much, Bryce.
All right.
You're welcome.
We'll be back next week. Thanks everyone for listening.